The air inside the Munich stadium carried a distinct, electric chill, the kind that only settles over a massive crowd when thousands of hearts are beating to the exact same rhythm. It was a night wrapped in the quiet magic of a long-awaited summer reunion, where the distance of oceans and years seemed to evaporate the moment the first ambient chords echoed through the towering structure. For the thousands gathering under the European sky for Erarang in Munich Day 1, this was more than a concert. It was a sanctuary of shared secrets, a living testament to a bond that had withstood the harshest storms of public scrutiny and the silent ache of time apart. As the stage lights flickered into a deep, velvety blue, a collective breath was held, a silent agreement among the crowd that what was about to unfold was a chapter written just for them, a sacred space where the noise of the outside world could finally be shut out. From the moment the members of BTS stepped into the spotlight, the atmosphere shifted from mere excitement into something deeply reverent and achingly raw. There was a vulnerability in the way they carried themselves, a subtle, unspoken language in their glances and the deliberate slowing of their movements that signaled they weren't just performing, they were remembering. The music swelled, weaving a sonic tapestry that felt intimately familiar yet entirely new in this massive, open-air arena. When the unmistakable melodies of their journey began to blend with the night air, the crowd seemed to instinctively understand the weight of the moment. It was a profound realization that despite the global magnitude of their fame, the true essence of this connection was built on the quiet, hidden moments, the private struggles, the shared tears, and the fierce, unyielding loyalty that outsiders could never truly comprehend. As the performance deepened, the emotional tension between the stage and the sea of glowing lights became almost tangible, thick with memories of everything it took to reach this specific night in Germany. Every vocal inflection carried a lifetime of dedication, every sharp, synchronized movement a reminder of the unseen hours spent perfecting a craft just to give it all away to the people waiting in the dark. The lyrics resonated not as mere words, but as a direct confession, an intimate dialogue whispering that the world outside might judge, speculate, and misinterpret, but within the boundaries of this stadium, the truth remained pure and untouched. The boys moved across the stage not as distant idols, but as keepers of a shared history, their eyes scanning the crowd, locking onto individual faces as if trying to memorize every single soul who had stood by them through the darkest seasons. There was a beautiful, haunting contrast between the grand scale of the production and the fierce intimacy of the emotions on display, making the massive stadium feel as small and sacred as a candlelit room. The transition into the core of the setlist brought forward an overwhelming wave of nostalgia, where the past and the present collided in a breathtaking display of artistry and raw human feeling. You could see it in the gentle curve of their smiles, the slight glisten in their eyes under the brilliant stage lights, and the way they leaned into each other for strength when the weight of the emotion threatened to overwhelm the melody. It was a living, breathing proof that no matter how much time passes or how vast the stadiums grow, the core of who they are together, and who they are to the people who truly see them, remains completely unchanged, a beautiful secret kept safe from a world that doesn't understand. The night seemed to stretch time itself, creating an immersive blur of music, light, and collective heartbeat that left everyone breathless and longing for the moment to never end. As the final notes of the evening began to drift toward the starry Munich sky, an overwhelming sense of gratitude and unspoken understanding settled over the arena, leaving an indelible mark on every heart present. It was the realization that some bonds are too deep for the world to ever fully grasp, a beautiful defiance wrapped in a melody, proving that they really don't know about the quiet magic that keeps this universe alive. The lingering resonance of that final chord seemed to hover in the cool night air, refusing to dissipate, as if the stadium itself was trying to hold on to the warmth of a moment that felt far too fleeting. In the quiet beat that followed, the silence of thousands of people holding their breath was louder than any cheer, a collective suspension of time where the reality of the outside world felt completely suspended. The members stood in the center of the stage, their chests rising and falling in unison, bathed in a soft golden glow that made them look incredibly human against the vast, dark backdrop of the arena. There was no rush to speak, no immediate need to fill the space with words, because the silence between them and the crowd was already filled with a decade's worth of unspoken promises, shared sacrifices, and a deep, intuitive understanding that required no translation. As they began to move closer to the edge of the stage, the physical distance between the performers and the audience seemed to vanish entirely, replaced by an overwhelming wave of empathy that swept through the rows. The subtle interactions between the members, a hand placed gently on a shoulder, a brief, reassuring nod, or a shared glance that broke out into a soft, private smile, spoke volumes to those who had watched them grow from passionate boys into resilient men. These were the private anchors that kept them grounded in a storm of global adoration, the small, hidden gestures that reminded everyone that beneath the dazzling choreography and the soaring vocals lay a brotherhood forged in the fires of relentless pressure. The crowd watched with a quiet reverence, capturing these fleeting glimpses of raw authenticity as if they were precious gems to be locked away in the safest corners of their memories. The atmosphere grew even more intimate as the soft, acoustic undertones of the next melody began to drift through the speakers, wrapping the entire stadium in a warm, comforting embrace that felt like coming home after a long, exhausting journey. It was a song that didn't demand perfection or high-energy spectacle, but rather invited everyone to let down their guard and simply exist together in the vulnerability of the present moment. In the flickering light of the ocean of glowing spheres, the faces of the fans were illuminated, showing tears tracing silent paths down cheeks and smiles that carried the weight of personal battles fought and won in tandem with the music. This was the true heartbeat of the night, an emotional exchange where the pain of isolation was washed away by the overwhelming realization that no one in this space was ever truly walking alone. With each passing minute, the narrative of the night became clearer, shifting from a celebration of music into a profound testament of survival and mutual salvation. The lyrics they sang felt less like a performance and more like a gentle, persistent whisper directly to the soul, acknowledging the scars of the past while looking forward to an uncertain future with a quiet, fierce courage. The raw emotion in their voices vibrated through the steel and concrete of the Munich stadium, transforming a cold, structural monument into a living, breathing sanctuary of hope. It was a beautiful, defiant declaration that no matter how loud the critics might get, or how heavy the expectations of the world became, the sanctuary they had built together with their listeners remained impenetrable, a sacred haven where they could always find their way back to who they truly were. The music shifted once more, deepening into a rhythm that felt like a steady, reassuring heartbeat echoing through the vast expanse of the open sky. There was a cinematic gravity to the way the stage lights dimmed to a deep twilight purple, casting long, dramatic shadows across the platform as the members slowly dispersed, walking along the extended walkways to reach the furthest edges of the crowd. This deliberate movement felt like a physical reaching out, an effort to bridge every remaining inch of space between their world and the thousands of individuals who had traveled from every corner of the continent to be here. As they walked, their eyes searched the dark, catching the glint of banners, the familiar symbols of a shared journey, and the intense, tearful gazes of people who had waited years for this exact second of recognition. In this sprawling, immersive landscape of light and sound, the emotional stakes of the night reached a new, breathtaking peak. A single, clear voice soared above the instrumental backing, rich with a raw, unpolished honesty that seemed to pierce right through the grandeur of the stadium and touch the very core of everyone listening. The sheer vulnerability of the performance was magnetic, holding the entire audience in a state of rapt captivity where no one dared to move, fearing they might break the delicate spell hanging over the arena. It was a moment of profound artistic surrender, where the pressure of being global icons was completely stripped away, leaving behind only the pure, unfiltered essence of individuals using their voices to heal, to connect, and to remind the world that their bond was something entirely sacred. The energy in the stadium began to build again, not with the frantic rush of a typical pop concert, but with the slow, powerful surge of an incoming tide. The members gathered back at the center stage, standing shoulder to shoulder in a tight formation that felt symbolic of their entire history, a unified front against the endless noise of the outside world. When the chorus hit, the explosion of sound from both the stage and the crowd was monumental, a collective release of years of longing, anticipation, and fiercely protected devotion. It was a beautiful, overwhelming chaotic harmony, a sensory experience so intense that it felt permanently etched into the very air of Munich, a definitive statement that some connections are destined to outlast the test of time and the misunderstandings of the world.